This is Carolina Business Review. Major support provided by High Point University, the premier life skills university focused on preparing students for the world as it is going to be. Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Okay, so it is hurricane season. It is also back to school, which also means back to work. I am not sure we talk enough to describe what we do on this dialogue and have been doing for over 3 decades now. We talk, we debate, we discuss with insiders and leaders from literally the mountains to the South Carolina coast and the North Carolina coast and all across the Carolinas about things like bold public policies, strategic workforce, infrastructure, transportation upgrades, smart debate, tax policy, banking, energy, agribusiness, and everything in between that keeps pushing the Carolinas economy further ahead and expansionary. Over the next half hour, we will meet the leaders, some entrepreneurs redefining what it means to do that and to be prosperous right now. So let's get started. Stay with us.
Major funding also by Foundation for the Carolinas, a catalyst for philanthropy and driver of civic engagement, helping individuals, nonprofits, and companies bring their charitable visions to life. Truliant Federal Credit Union, proudly serving the Carolinas since 1952 by focusing on what truly matters, our members' financial success. Welcome to Brighter Banking. And Martin Marietta, a leading provider of natural resource-based building materials, providing the foundation on which our communities improve and grow. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, John Hood, from the John William Pope Foundation, Carl Blackstone of the Greater Columbia Chamber of Commerce, and special guest Steve Henry, President of Paper and Packaging, Domtar.
Hello, welcome again to our program. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. You know, it's hurricane season, and this is just my impression, but the way we've kind of dealt with that over the decades was ho-hum, okay, we're going to get a couple storms, but a year ago, when it blew through the Carolinas, and of course, the deadly toll in western North Carolina seems to have brought a different gravitas, John. Do you get that? Do you get that sense that there's more to it now for us?
I think that's right. I think there's maybe a slight precedent with Hurricane Hugo. Remember when it hit, it went through Charleston, it hit Charlotte. When it got to places like Charlotte, they're not quite as used to thinking about hurricane season as a threat of that magnitude. And similarly, western North Carolina, western South Carolina, parts of Georgia, et cetera, western Florida, they weren't used to thinking about the hurricane season in quite the way. And of course, the scale of the devastation in western North Carolina, you have hurricanes in the Carolinas. They've always happened. They're going to continue to happen. We mostly tend to associate those with the coastal areas, the coastal plain. They're used to thinking about being vulnerable. And I think part of what has been so sobering and so, as you say, transformational about the Helene story is where it hit and the fact that people really weren't expecting the kind of damage in the mountains from a hurricane than they experienced.
Does this change policy for us?
Absolutely. I mean, long term, we've got to start looking at...
And I'm sorry, Carl, in more than just the year following the devastation, does it change the DNA?
I think it does, and at least it puts the thought that these things can hit all parts of the state. There's nobody safe from a hurricane in either state, quite frankly. So I think from resiliency and to how do we, I mean, there's going to be bills this year in the General Assembly, paying folks back, and there's still costs being occurred from these storms a year later. So the impact that it has, I think, will actually drive more funding to reserve accounts for natural disasters, things like that. The road and the road repair work that had to be done, very expensive. So I think it has to be part of the dialogue and thinking that that's just not a fluke. It's going to happen again at some point. Yes, you're right. The coast has always been, and it's cyclical.
Ground zero in most,
right? We saw a bunch in the 90s and early 2000s. We took a break and got lucky for a number of seasons. I think we're We got to make sure that we're always prepared for that.
So, John, last question on this, because we do want to get, but there was a recent report and study and published that the average loss for Western North Carolina businesses, the average loss was $330,000. Some small businesses don't even have that total revenue. So I can't, I mean, you talk, this devastating.
You can't recover some of these businesses. And think about it. In the mountains, water has nowhere to go. You know, that's why it was so devastating. That amount of water dropped in places where it just doesn't have very far to go. The force just wiping things away, wiping whole communities away. I mean, they're not going to be able to be rebuilt fully in that. And we have, remember, in North Carolina, we have some families and businesses, certainly families, that haven't really fully recovered from the 2016 and 2018 hurricanes that hit eastern North Carolina. So some of these things take a very long time, and it doesn't help when the state manages the money poorly.
And one last piece of this. This is the first time we've not had a national FEMA response. I mean, they're pushing that down to the states. So the changes that have been happening at the federal level through DOGE cuts are going to have a significant impact this year, which will force legislators to think differently on how they fund it.
Let's shift to important public policy in the Carolinas, in the North Carolina, the U.S. Senate. Seat being vacated by Tom Tillis, not running for re-election. No big surprise, I think. How does that pan out? If we look at the governor's race in North Carolina last year, the Dems won easily.
Yes.
Can you transpose that type of DNA onto the Senate race?
Not really, because the governor's race last year in North Carolina had a Democratic candidate, Josh Stein, against a disaster that was never going to win, and that actually ruined for Republicans other races. Just the closer you were in proximity to the governor's race on the ballot as a Republican, the worse
literally
you
on
did.
the ballot.
Yeah. So that won't be the same this year. It'll be competitive. You know, North and South Carolina rhyme, but our politics are quite different. North Carolina is a very competitive state in the Senate race, governor's race, has been for decades, will continue to be. Roy Cooper, the longtime governor, former attorney general, so he's been elected statewide many times in North Carolina. He's leading in the latest polls by 6 to 8 points over Michael Whatley, the chair of the Republican National Committee, used to be the head of the state party in North Carolina, and before that was Elizabeth Dole aide, worked for Bush, so he's been around politics, but he hasn't been on a ballot. And so the name recognition for Michael Whatley is very low. For Roy Cooper, it is virtually universal in North Carolina. So it's not surprising that Cooper would start 6, 8 points ahead, something like that. But he's below 50%, and it's going to be the most expensive Senate race in the history of the United States.
Was it $1 billion? Did I see that number right?
It might get up to $1 billion, but even if it doesn't, it'll probably be the most expensive Senate race in our history. And that means that there'll be a chance for either candidate to win. I do think Cooper is favored at this point.
But in North Carolina, the three political parties, Republicans, in this order, Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. I mean, that's a meaningful
Democrats
shift.
will soon fall to the third. You're right.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
for a party that had been majority party in North Carolina for most of the history of the state, this is a humbling experience to not only fall below unaffiliated, which is the largest category in North Carolina, is unaffiliated, but they're going to fall below Republican within the next few months. Now, again, those unaffiliated voters aren't always undecided voters. Many of them are already loyal Ds or loyal Rs. So some of my Republican friends get excited about this, and I point out, you know, we have 10 statewide elected offices in North Carolina. Half of them are held by Republicans, half by Democrats.
Interesting.
Calm down. This is going to be a competitive race.
Calm down. How expensive is the governor's race in South Carolina?
It's going to be expensive. I mean, but that's just the nature of campaigns.
You think a high watermark expense?
Absolutely, and especially since we have an open race. It'll be, now, we're different. We have Republican-controlled supermajority in both houses, and all constitutional offices are held by Republicans. So it'll be a Republican seat. We've got 5 in the race now.
Odds-on favored.
I would put the Attorney General and the Lieutenant Governor as to the end of the day will be there. Got a couple of members of the House of Representatives that are running as well. It's early. It's really early. So the primary is June of next year. So it'll get very expensive, and it'll get nasty early in South Carolina.
Okay. You want to Oh, what happens? So Nancy Mace, Ralph Norman, both congressional candidates that have announced for that role.
Yeah, Pamela Abbott and Alan Wilson. I think at the end of the day, Abbott and Wilson probably will be at the end of the day in a runoff.
Okay, so there won't be any surprises on party switch down there in the governor's mansion.
I don't think so.
Yeah, and you're laughing because you're probably right. Anyway, we'll unpack that later. Gentlemen, stay with us. So many things to talk about and unpack. Before we do that, before we bring our guest on, coming up on this program, he has been here before. He has a meaningful opinion in this country when it comes to being a central banker. He is the president of the Richmond Federal Reserve. His name is Tom Barkin. He will be back on this program. Also, speaking of leaders from the College of Charleston, we are welcoming again Dr. Andrew Sue, who is the president of College of Charleston as well. Like many of our special guests and organizations, the story of this company has been going on, and its origins can be traced directly back more than 200 years. We have that kind of legacy in the Carolinas for some of our companies. And for a good part of the history of this company, they have been manufacturing in the Carolinas. Joining us again is the president of Fort Mill, South Carolina-based packaging company, Domtar, Steve Henry. Steve, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Do you dream, sleep, eat tariff fear? Or is it something now that is, Steve, how do you think about tariffs? Do you model it out? Do you know that, is it going to hit the P&L? Has it hit the P&L? What do you think?
I think a lot about tariffs. As a matter of fact, in my household, the family has declared a moratorium on tariff discussions. So obviously, we have to think about it. We have got an amazing team of 14,000 people across North America. We have primarily a domestic supply chain, which is a huge competitive advantage. But maybe to break it down both short-term and longer-term in terms of how we're seeing the tariffs impact us today and kind of how we, I think once we get past the uncertainty, how we would anticipate the tariffs to impact us in the future. You know, in the here and the now, what it is contributed is a tremendous level of uncertainty into the economy. And we see it both in terms of, you know, business sentiment as well as consumer confidence. And what we see across, certainly we participate in many different markets that are through all facets of our economy, and generally both businesses and consumers are being conservative right now. So overall demand for products, and we see it outside our industries and markets as well, the demand is down, which obviously is not healthy for manufacturing. The other thing that is a bit counterintuitive to most people right now is what we've seen in the short term is in our core markets, we compete, we have to be globally competitive, but the level of imports coming into the United States have doubled this year compared to where they're at on a historical basis. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is, you know, foreign competition is really trying to bring as much product into the United States at pre-tariff levels as they can. And they're willing to inventory and carry those costs. I think there's a lot of debate in our country. Why haven't we seen the tariff kind of financial impact at the consumer level and the business level to the extent that we would expect?
You mean positive or negative, either way?
Yeah, well, negative, I think mostly is people expecting those costs to get passed along. And I think, you know, you look at retailers, I think they've done the same thing in terms of the Walmart, Targets of the world. I think there's a lot of inventory that we're going through, but eventually we will run through that pre-tariff priced inventory, and eventually those costs will have to get absorbed by businesses and consumers out there. But it is coming. We haven't seen it or felt it necessarily. From our perspective, we feel we're well positioned because most of our raw materials are domestic in nature. And so, and you think about fiber in particular, most of our fiber comes within a 150-mile radius of our facilities. So we're largely, I think, well positioned given the tariffs. Our biggest request, right, is we know we need to be globally competitive. All we want is a level playing field in our domestic markets in particular, and that's certainly what we're striving for. So I think once we get past this period of uncertainty and into the future, it certainly will help level the playing field and certainly help support U.S. manufacturing more broadly.
Mr. Hood?
So let's talk about labor markets. Is Domtar able to find the workers you need at the prices you could pay that have the skills that you need right now, or is this a problem that you're struggling with?
I think it's a challenge. You know, I'm excited and energized. Our country really wants to have a manufacturing renaissance in our country, which is fantastic. And I've worked in manufacturing for my entire career, over 30 years now, and it has been an unbelievable experience. There's just tremendous people that I've gotten to work with. You feel good about the sustainable products that we're producing for our society, and I feel really good about the positive economic impact we have here throughout the Carolinas, as well as across North America. What we are seeing, though, is through the generations, parents in particular, less and less parents are encouraging their children to go into manufacturing. And so we are generally what we consider the employer of choice in our local communities in terms of the level of wages and the benefits that we provide. But that alone, the societal values and expectations have changed, right? And so our facilities, because they're capital intensive, they run 24 hours, 7 days a week. That's not as appealing to today's generation, right? When you want to have a better work-life balance. And so we are having to challenge ourselves and think about how do we alter our shift schedules, how do we make ourselves more appealing to today's generation. They are our future, and so we don't see as many applicants today as we did 10 years ago for the same manufacturing jobs, even though we have the best jobs in a particular rural community. But what we do is we work with other manufacturers. I think we have to work on this together. We work with partners in the states and our local communities as well. And we do a tremendous amount of outreach, in particular through the schools, starting all the way at elementary, obviously focus more at the middle school, high school level, and then obviously very involved with our universities in terms of having interns, cooperative education, entry-level engineering and sales programs for people to enter our industry.
Mm-hmm. Carl? Nice to meet you. Specifically in the Carolinas, paper has always been a large industry along the coast, along the waterways, Bennettsville and Plymouth and North Carolina. Tell me, what's the long-term strategy in the paper business with so many people moving? We're losing farmland and we're losing forests. What is the sustainability model going forward for a place with such rapid growth like the Carolinas?
That's a great question. And I think it begins with we practice sustainable harvesting, and you're exactly right. Probably there's a lot of discussion about that often, and it's the urban development is the biggest threat to our forests. For every tree we harvest, we plant 3 trees in its place, and we ensure we work with NGOs, we work with internationally recognized certification standards to ensure that our customers can feel really proud to use our products and it is being sustainably harvested. From a forest resource availability, and just I would say more broadly, all of the natural resources that we need to use, whether it's water, energy, the trees obviously, we continue to focus as an industry on how we can continue to be more efficient. We were recognized by our industry organization, it's called AFMPA, but a Leadership and Sustainability Award for Domtar. We've started an internal competition to reduce our water usage at our facilities. And oftentimes, water projects are the projects that don't necessarily make the ROI, cutoff there, but it's the right thing to do in terms of really having that forward-thinking view so that our industry is here for the next 100 years. What's amazing at Domtar is we made a transition 3.5 years ago, going from a public corporation to a single private strategic owner who has a 40-plus year time horizon. And it's been really exciting to work with him because what we want to do together is really transition this industry. We've seen here in the Carolinas, it's been more of a sunset industry, unfortunately. And really what we want to do is we want to make this a sunrise industry. And if you look at our Plymouth, North Carolina facility as an example, the products that we used to produce there are not needed as much by society today. And so we invested heavily and repositioned that facility to make what's called fluff pulp, which is the main raw material that goes into baby diapers and adult incontinence products. We also made a significant investment at the Marlborough, South Carolina facility to reposition it into what's called the thermal base paper. But if you think about your Amazon box may have 3 labels on it, and there's a paper base in there. And we're the only producer of that here in North America. When you go to Starbucks and you get your cup of coffee and they put on the sticky media with your name and your preferences for your cup, that's another example of thermal. But we're investing heavily. You do have to continue to do that, and I think that's a bit of the challenge in the industry is when you're a public company, and I worked for many of those over the course of my career, there's a lot of short-term financial pressures. The I think the value of working for a strategic, private, long-term focused investor is we can really invest and ensure that we're here for the next 50 to 100 years.
Let me go back to a tariffs question, and not to beat this horse down, but you know, we're so focused on tariffs and the uncertainty of it, as you said, and we've heard that over and over again, that it's uncertainty. Business doesn't like uncertainty. However, I've got to think, Steve, that the tariffs have an end date. I mean, we can't, this is not sustainable, of course. It's not going to be good for anybody's P&L on the globe. So a year from now, and maybe it's not a year, maybe it's 18 months, maybe it's 9 months. A year from now, is this even going to be a dialogue about tariffs and the uncertainty of it? Or do you feel like we are going to get over a hump where you can be more, heck, we're just worried about inflation and hiring the right people? Tariffs was so yesterday's news.
I would tend to agree with you. I think this is a point in time. We're seeing a kind of a reset in the global trade policy here. Whether it remains long-term or not, I think it's a point in time, and whether it stays or whether it dissolves in the next few years, what we have to stay focused, to your point, is remaining globally competitive, continue to reposition facilities into growth markets, make sure that we've got the best and brightest, most engaged team here in North America, and that's what's going to enable our long-term success.
Is the cost of capital dropping? Clearly it's dropping, with the Fed talking about even dropping interest rates. Does that help? I'm sure it helps, but does that encourage you to be more CapEx in the next 12 to 18 months?
The cost of capital now is actually quite a bit higher than what it was just a few years ago.
Well, no,
with where interest rates, and we're all eagerly looking forward to interest rate drops.
Yeah,
I do think more broadly businesses are going to have to adjust to a higher cost of capital than maybe what we've enjoyed the previous 5 years. Okay. To your point, it should trend in the right direction. What I'm personally quite excited about is there are some strong elements in the recent tax bill that was passed that certainly are supportive of CapEx investments, supportive of investing not just in my company, but in manufacturing more broadly across the United States. And I think those will definitely be positive for our country.
Thank you. We have about 3 minutes. John, question?
So you mentioned urban development being a threat to forest acreage. More generally, the Carolinas are growing rapidly, as we all know. There's lots of people moving in, businesses moving in. Puts a lot of stress on our infrastructure, road capacity, water and sewer capacity, energy generation and transmission. Are you concerned that we're keeping up with the infrastructure needs in the Carolinas and serving businesses and consumers adequately?
Overall, I've been in the Carolinas now almost 9 years, and I think given the amount of growth that of course I'm part of that growth, and that I've seen and witnessed over my time here, can the states, can you always continuously improve? We can, but given the phenomenal level of growth, I see both states as really being pro-business, pro-growth, and making a lot of the right investments. And I think the key is the public-private partnerships. How can we continue to work together to ensure that infrastructure doesn't become a limiting factor to continuing that growth into the future? From a business perspective, the challenge for us, much like I shared on the water side, is you cannot wait until you have a constraint. We're thinking 10, 20, 30, 40 years into the future and making sure we're making the right investments. And the way we look, every resource is precious, and we have to figure out how to be a more efficient business and use less of those resources going forward into the future.
We have about a minute and a half left. Do you have a quick?
Yeah, are the colleges and universities meeting your expectations as it relates to delivering a product that can help you and Domtar grow folks right out of college? So your entry-level college-age graduates, are they preparing them for you?
Absolutely. We hire both out of the North Carolina, South Carolina university systems, and we get, I'm really energized when I get to work with our young people. It makes me excited for our future. They bring a fresh set of eyes, certainly different expectations, but new opportunities come with them as well. And so we're very pleased. I'm a bit biased. The way I got into the paper industry was through a cooperative education program at Virginia Tech. And so we certainly, this summer, we had approximately 60 summer interns here in the area. And using those universities, I think that enables those college students to get a more complete education, and they're more prepared to help us in the workforce.
Just quickly, in about 30 seconds, you talked about the continuum of trying to find workers. coming from high school all the way up through the technical colleges in South Carolina, at least. I mean, does that work for you? Do you feel like that's an effective use of your time to get in there?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And you
okay.
have to invest every year and continue to develop those relationships and that pipeline of talent. I'll use myself as an example. I had never been exposed to manufacturing through my family, just through the career fields that my parents and their families were a part of. Cooperative education and working with a manufacturing company through my university has opened an amazing career for me, and certainly now I'm opening it up to others.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thanks for being back on the program. Thanks for adhering to our time constraints. You're a good sport, but nice to see you again.
Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Carl, nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks.
John, always, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, carolinabusinessreview.org. Until next week, I'm Chris Whiting. Good night.
Gratefully acknowledging support by Martin Marietta, Truliant Federal Credit Union, Foundation for the Carolinas, Sunoco, Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, High Point University, and by viewers like you. Thank you.